The storm outside was wild, the kind that made the whole forest seem alive. Wind slammed against the windows, and rain drummed loudly on the roof. She sat alone in the dimly lit living room, her robe pulled close around her shoulders, trying not to notice how empty the house felt without her husband. A sudden knock at the door made her jump. Her heart raced as she froze, staring toward the sound. Who could possibly be outside in such weather? She hesitated, then slowly rose to her feet, her bare steps quiet against the wooden floor. Another knock came, louder this time, almost desperate. Gathering her courage, she moved to the door and pulled it open just a little. He stood there, drenched from head to toe, water dripping from his hair, his shirt clinging tightly to his chest. His eyes, dark and pleading, met hers with a quiet intensity. "Please," he said, his voice hoarse from the cold. "My car broke down on the forest road. I've been walking for what feels like hours. Just let me stay until the storm eases." She gripped the edge of the door, torn. He was a stranger. Every instinct told her to be careful. I don't think I can," she whispered, her voice unsteady. His shoulders sank, and he glanced back into the darkness of the forest. "I understand," he murmured, stepping back. "I'll try to find shelter elsewhere." The sight of him turning away, rain soaking him to the bone, struck at her heart. Alone. Helpless. The storm was merciless. If she let him go now, she wasn't sure he would make it through the night. "Wait," she called softly. He turned back, water dripping from his jawline, hope flickering in his tired eyes. She swallowed hard, her kindness overpowering her fear. "You can come in. Just for tonight." Relief washed over his face. "Thank you," he whispered, stepping inside. The warmth of the house wrapped around him as he crossed the threshold. She quickly fetched a towel and handed it to him without meeting his eyes. Their fingers brushed, and a strange shiver ran through her, one that had nothing to do with the cold. "You'll catch your death in those clothes," she said quietly. "I'll find you something dry to wear." He nodded gratefully, rubbing the towel over his hair. I don't know how to thank you." "You don't need to," she replied, her voice softer now. "It was the right thing to do." She turned to the cupboard, pulling out a folded shirt and trousers. As she handed them over, their hands touched again, this time lingering a second too long. "These belong to my brother," she explained, avoiding his gaze. "They should fit." His eyes locked on hers, deep and sincere. "You've saved me tonight." Her chest tightened at the way he said it. She quickly looked away, whispering, "Go and change before you get sick. I'll make some tea." As she walked toward the kitchen, her heart pounded faster. She told herself she had let him in out of kindness. That was all. But deep inside, she feared she had welcomed more than just a stranger into her home. She sat near the fire, the cup of tea warm between her hands. The thin gown she wore clung softly to her skin, the lamplight making her look almost unreal. As she raised the cup, her hand trembled slightly. A few drops of tea slipped over the edge, trickling down. He couldn't look away. The tea rolled slowly over her collarbone, sliding down into the hollow of her chest before disappearing beneath the thin fabric. The gown, already light and transparent, darkened where the liquid touched, clinging closer to her skin. His breath caught. Through the fabric he could see the soft rise of her chest, the gentle line of her cleavage now made clearer by the wet patch. The firelight flickered against her damp skin, making her look even more tempting, almost glowing. She gasped softly, setting the cup aside and brushing at the wet spot with quick fingers, but every movement made the fabric shift and press tighter against her curves. He watched helplessly, his eyes tracing the path the tea had taken. The delicate shape of her shoulders, the smooth skin revealed through the gown, the way her breath made her chest rise and fall, it all held him captive. When she noticed his gaze, her cheeks flushed, and she pulled the blanket quickly over herself. "Don't look," she whispered, her voice shaky. He lowered his eyes, though his chest heaved with the effort. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." his voice faltered. I couldn't stop myself. The silence between them was heavy, the storm outside only making the closeness more dangerous. The storm beat hard against the windows, the fire the only source of warmth between them. Aira pulled the blanket higher, her damp hair clinging to her shoulders. Her voice broke the silence. You never told me your name. He looked at her, the flames reflecting in his dark eyes. Uno, he said softly. She repeated it, almost tasting the sound. Uno, then she gave a faint smile. Strange. It feels familiar already. He leaned slightly closer. And you? Aira, she whispered, her gaze dropping to the fire. My name is Aira. The quiet lingered until she drew a deeper breath, her voice trembling. Uno, can I tell you something? Something I've never said aloud. He nodded gently. If you want to. Her eyes stayed on the fire, her words coming slowly. The night I was married, it rained like this. The whole house glowed with candles. The bed was covered in roses. I was terrified, but I wanted to believe it would be beautiful. He touched me gently, kissed me slowly, told me I was his everything. That night, I thought I had found love. Her lips trembled as she went on. But it didn't last. He changed. What began with tenderness turned into routine, lust without love. And I kept telling myself, maybe tomorrow, maybe someday he'll love me again. But someday never came. Aira's voice faded into silence. She slowly turned onto her side, facing away from him, her eyes closing as though the memories had exhausted her. The blanket slipped just a little, the transparent gown beneath it outlining the soft curve of her body. Uno's breath caught. In the glow of the fire, he could see the deep line of her cleavage where the blanket no longer covered her chest. She breathed slowly, unaware, her lashes resting against her cheeks. He tried to look away, but his gaze lingered, tracing the way the fabric clung to her skin, the warmth of her body so close under the shared blanket. His thoughts battled silently. She's asleep. She trusts you. Don't betray that trust. And yet, he couldn't stop looking, drawn to her beauty, to the quiet vulnerability she had just revealed. Uno's chest rose and fell heavily as he lay beside her, the storm outside echoing the storm inside him. Aira's breathing was steady now, her eyes closed, her face softened by the firelight. She looked peaceful, vulnerable, so different from the strong, careful woman who had opened the door to him earlier. He swallowed hard, his gaze drifting once more to the curve of her cleavage, faintly visible where the blanket had slipped. The sheer gown clung to her skin, outlining the rise and fall of her chest with each breath she took. Don't, he told himself. She's giving you kindness, a roof, warmth. Don't ruin it. But his hand trembled under the blanket, moving slowly, almost against his will. He let it hover near her waist, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her body. Aira stirred faintly, but her eyes remained closed. Uno's heart pounded louder. He slid his palm gently to rest against her side through the thin fabric, holding still as though afraid to break the spell. She drew in a sharp breath, her body stiffening. For a moment, he thought she would pull away, that she would tell him to stop. But instead, her fingers moved beneath the blanket, slowly, hesitantly. Touching his hand, not to push it away but to keep it there. The message was wordless, but clear. His chest tightened, heat flooding through him. He shifted closer, his chest brushing against her back, his breath warm against her hair. Aira, he whispered, almost a question. She didn't open her eyes, but her lips parted ever so slightly, her breath trembling as she whispered back, just, don't let go. Uno held her gently against him, his hand resting at her waist beneath the blanket. Aira's breathing was unsteady, though her eyes stayed closed as if she was afraid to face what was happening. The storm raged louder outside, but inside, the only sound he noticed was the quick rhythm of her breaths mingling with his own. He leaned closer, his lips brushing against her hair. Aira, he whispered again, his voice low and careful, as though afraid the moment would shatter. Her fingers tightened softly around his hand, keeping it in place. She didn't speak, but the small movement told him more than words could. Slowly, he turned her toward him. The blanket slipped further, the firelight painting the soft curve of her collarbone, the gown clinging faintly to her chest. His gaze flickered down for just a heartbeat before returning to her face. Her eyes opened slightly now, dark and filled with hesitation, but also something else, something she had been holding back for too long. Uno's breath brushed against her lips. "Tell me to stop, and I will." She didn't. Instead, her lips parted just a little more, and that was all the answer he needed. He closed the distance slowly, carefully, his lips pressing softly against hers. Warmth rushed through them both, the kiss tender at first, almost shy. But as her hand rose to touch his chest, the kiss deepened. The blanket cocooned them, their bodies closer now, heat replacing the storm's chill. Uno's fingers traced her side through the thin fabric, while Aira's lips trembled against his, answering his hunger with a longing she could no longer hide. When they finally broke apart for breath, her forehead rested against his. Her voice was barely a whisper. "I shouldn't, but I can't stop." Uno cupped her cheek gently, his thumb brushing her skin. "Neither can I." Uno's hand trembled slightly as he held her closer, their lips meeting again under the warmth of the blanket. This time, the kiss wasn't hesitant. It lingered, deepening as Aira's fingers curled into his shirt, pulling him nearer. The storm outside howled, but neither of them cared. All that existed now was the soft press of her lips, the warmth of her body against his, and the thundering of their hearts. Uno's hand moved slowly from her waist up to her back, tracing the curve of her spine through the thin fabric of her gown. Aira shivered under his touch, her breath catching in her throat as the kiss grew hungrier, needier. Her lips parted for him, and he kissed her deeper, his breath mingling with hers. She let out the faintest sound, a soft gasp that only fueled the fire building between them. The blanket slipped lower as they shifted, revealing more of her collarbone and the graceful line of her neck. Uno's lips left hers only to trail along her cheek, brushing softly down to the delicate curve of her throat. Aira's eyes fluttered closed, her hand gripping his shoulder, her body trembling. "Uno," she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion she could no longer hold back. He kissed the hollow of her neck, his voice low against her skin. "Tell me to stop, and I will." But instead of pulling away, she turned her face back to his, kissing him again with a sudden intensity that surprised them both. The blanket wrapped them tighter, their bodies pressed close, the heat between them drowning out the storm's cold fury. His hand slid down her side again, resting gently at the curve of her hip, while her fingers traced the line of his jaw, pulling him deeper into the kiss. Neither of them spoke now, their silence was filled only with the sound of soft breaths, quickened heartbeats, and the storm raging helplessly outside. The blanket cocooned them in warmth, shutting out the storm's fury. Their kiss deepened until Aira's breath came fast, her body trembling against Uno's. His lips left hers, trailing softly down the curve of her cheek, then brushing across her jaw. She tilted her head back without realizing, giving him more of her skin to explore. He pressed a line of tender kisses along her throat, feeling the quick pulse beneath her skin. Aira gasped softly, her fingers curling into his hair. Uno's lips traveled lower, pausing at the hollow above her chest where the blanket had slipped. He kissed there slowly, reverently, his breath warm against her skin. Aira shivered, clutching him closer, torn between hesitation and the powerful rush of longing flooding through her. "Uno," she whispered, her eyes still closed, voice trembling. He lifted his head, brushing her hair back gently. "If you don't want this, tell me." Her chest rose quickly, her lips trembling as she whispered back, "I want, but I'm afraid." His hand cupped her cheek tenderly, his forehead resting against hers. "Then let me take away your fear. One breath at a time." She didn't answer with words. Instead, she pulled him closer, and his lips returned to her skin, soft kisses across her collarbone, trailing upward again to her lips. Everywhere he touched, she felt warmth bloom, chasing away the cold of the storm and the loneliness she had carried for so long. The blanket had slipped low enough that the soft glow of the fire revealed more of Aira's chest. Uno's lips lingered at her collarbone, his breath warm against her skin. Her eyes fluttered closed, her hand trembling as it gripped his shoulder. The storm outside crashed, but inside, the only sound was the quickened rhythm of their breaths. Uno lifted his head slightly, his lips brushing her ear as he whispered, "Aira, may I?" Her lashes lifted just enough for her to meet his gaze, her cheeks flushed deeply. "May you, what?" she breathed, her voice shaky. His eyes dropped briefly, meaning clear. He whispered softly, "Kiss you here." His fingers gently brushed the edge of the blanket near her chest. Aira's breath caught, her heart pounding so hard she was certain he could feel it. For a long moment, she said nothing, torn between fear and the undeniable pull in her chest. Finally, she gave the faintest nod, her eyes slipping closed again. "Only if you're gentle." Uno's chest tightened at her words. He cupped her cheek tenderly, pressing a soft kiss to her lips first as though to seal the promise. Then, slowly, reverently, his lips began to trail lower again, toward the place she had just allowed. Aira shivered under him, clutching the blanket but not pulling it up this time. Her breath came in quick gasps as she waited for the touch she had both feared and longed for. Uno's lips trailed softly down from her collarbone, pausing just above the curve of her chest. Aira's body trembled beneath the blanket, her breaths quick and shallow. He glanced up once more, giving her the chance to stop him. Her eyes remained closed, her lashes fluttering against her cheeks, but the faintest tilt of her head told him she wouldn't turn him away. With careful reverence, he lowered his lips to her skin, pressing a gentle kiss to the top of her cleavage where the firelight touched her. Aira gasped softly, her hand clutching the blanket tighter, though she didn't pull it higher. The warmth of his mouth sent a shiver through her, her chest rising quickly against him. Uno lingered there, his lips moving slowly, tenderly, as if savoring every heartbeat beneath her skin. Between kisses, he whispered softly, "You're breathtaking, Aira." Her fingers slid from the blanket to his hair, hesitant at first, then holding him there as if she didn't want him to stop. A soft sound escaped her lips, almost a sigh, as the storm outside raged louder. Uno kissed her again, a little lower this time, his breath warm against her skin. She arched faintly toward him, her body betraying the desire she had tried so hard to hide. Her lips parted, her voice trembling. "Uno, please, don't stop." Uno's lips pressed lower, each kiss deeper, slower, filled with a hunger he tried to keep gentle. Aira's breathing grew heavier, her chest rising beneath his touch, her fingers tightening in his hair as if she couldn't let him go. The blanket shifted further, slipping enough to reveal more of her soft skin to the firelight. Uno's hand brushed along her side, feeling the warmth of her body through the thin gown. Every shiver, every quick breath from her only pulled him deeper into her spell. She tilted her head back, eyes still closed, her lips parting in a trembling sigh. "Uno," she whispered, the sound filled with both fear and longing. His kisses grew more insistent, moving slowly across the curve of her chest, lingering where her heart beat fastest. Between kisses, he whispered against her skin, "You're so beautiful. So perfect." Her body arched faintly toward him, her hands sliding from his hair down to his shoulders, pulling him closer. The storm outside thundered, but inside, the heat between them drowned out the cold. Uno lifted his head, meeting her face again, his lips brushing hers. This kiss was different, fiercer, desperate, as if they had both been waiting years for this single moment. Aira kissed him back with the same urgency, her hesitation melting into need. Her fingers clung to him, her body trembling but no longer pulling away. When their lips finally parted for air, she rested her forehead against his, her voice a broken whisper. "I don't know what's happening to me, but I can't let you go." Uno cupped her face tenderly, his thumb stroking her cheek. "Then don't. Stay right here with me." Their lips met again, hotter this time, as though the fire itself had moved beneath the blanket with them. Aira clung to Uno, her fingers digging into his shoulders, her body trembling with every kiss. Uno's hand, which had rested at her hip, began to move slowly upward beneath the blanket. His fingers traced the delicate curve of her waist, sliding over the soft fabric of her gown. Each touch made Aira shiver, her breath catching as if the world outside had disappeared. She broke the kiss only long enough to whisper, "Uno. I shouldn't." Her voice was fragile, but her hands didn't push him away, instead, they pulled him closer. He kissed her softly again, his lips brushing her trembling mouth. "Then tell me to stop," he whispered against her lips, "and I will." Her eyes fluttered closed, her heart racing. For a moment, silence filled the space between them. Then, with a trembling breath, she whispered, "Don't stop." Uno's chest tightened, his hand sliding higher, feeling the warmth of her body through the thin gown. He kissed her again, deeper this time, while his fingers gently explored the curve of her side. The blanket slipped lower, exposing more of her bare skin to the firelight. Uno's lips trailed along her jaw, then down her neck, each kiss slow and deliberate. Aira gasped softly, arching closer to him, her own hands exploring his back as if she couldn't hold back anymore. "Uno," she breathed, her voice trembling with both fear and desire. He whispered against her skin, "You're safe with me, Aira. I promise." And with that, he pulled her closer, their bodies entwined beneath the blanket as the storm outside pounded helplessly against the walls. The fire crackled softly, the storm roaring outside, but Aira barely heard it. Her world had shrunk to the warmth of Uno's body pressed against hers, the safety of his arms, and the hunger in his kisses. She clung to him, her lips trembling beneath his as he deepened the kiss. Her breath came in quick gasps, her chest rising against him, the thin fabric of her gown offering little barrier between them. Uno's hand traced her waist again, but this time, instead of stopping, his fingers slid lower, finding the edge of her gown beneath the blanket. He hesitated, his lips brushing hers as he whispered, "Aira, may I?" Her heart hammered. She knew what he meant. Fear and longing twisted inside her, but when she opened her eyes, she saw no demand in his gaze, only devotion, and a silent plea. With a shaky breath, she gave the faintest nod. Only be gentle." Uno's chest tightened. He kissed her again, softly, as his hand slipped beneath the fabric. The warmth of her bare skin beneath his fingertips made his breath hitch, his heart pounding so loud he was sure she could feel it. Aira gasped softly at the touch, her body shivering under his hand, but she didn't pull away. Instead, her fingers gripped his shirt tighter, her lips finding his again with a desperate urgency. His hand explored slowly, reverently, tracing the soft lines of her body as though committing every curve to memory. Each brush of his fingertips drew another trembling breath from her, another whisper of his name on her lips. The blanket cocooned them closer, shutting out the storm, leaving only heat, breath, and the quiet sound of two hearts giving in to what they had both been trying to resist.